All right, why don't we get going, and anyone else who wants to join can catch up. So I'm Clayton Rose. I'm the president of the college. I'm thrilled to be here with Phil Schiller. Phil, welcome. Great to have you here. Thank you for making time. I will make a few introductory remarks about Phil. First, a couple of administrative things. We'll have about 15 minutes where I'll chat with Phil, offer some questions and some things for Phil to talk about. And then we'll take questions that come in over the transom. You can use the Q&A function. You can start to put them in as you wish. And I'll mix those up with other questions that I've got as well, and we'll keep moving along. The thing I would also point out is that Phil will be making his comments as Phil, not as Apple. And so while Phil works at Apple, and as obviously there's a lot that's intertwined there, these are Phil's comments and not Apple's comments. It is great to be with everybody this afternoon. This is homecoming. This is the first virtual homecoming in the history of Bowdoin College. I suspect, given the way technology goes, it may not be the last, but I hope it's the last that we do involuntarily and as a function of a pandemic. So it's great to have everybody here, and I hope that you and your families are safe and well in what is a very difficult time. We're really pleased to be able to, and I'm pleased to be able to spend some time with Phil. He is a parent and trustee of the college, has been a leader at Apple for many years. He's been there for into 3 decades now, was at the creation of what Apple is and what Apple is now. It is the most valuable company in the world, and I think without much doubt and much debate, the most powerful brand in the world. And we'll spend some time on both of those. Phil began working at Apple when he was 27 and has worked there in 2 stints, a thing that we'll talk about a little bit. Came back in his second stint when Steve Jobs came back to save the company, and he asked Phil to come back and be part of the team that did that. I'd say they did a little more than just save the company. He recently announced in August that he was stepping down as the senior vice president and head of worldwide marketing, and was attempting to step back a little bit. He is now an Apple fellow, but he is responsible for Apple events in the App Store. And as he told me the other day, there's not much rest right now. So we can spend some time talking about that as well. It is through the launch events, the last one of which was a couple of weeks ago, in which Phil was responsible for, that I think many of us have seen Phil on stage and on video, but also have become kind of a ubiquitous presence every 6 months or so. And in the launch of everything, beginning with the iPod, Phil was responsible for the click wheel on the iPod. For those that remember, this month is the 19th anniversary of that. I still have mine in a desk drawer. But everything that's followed, the MacBook Pro, the iPhone, the iPad, I've got my Series 6 watch here, all of the products that have literally changed our lives. And Phil has been there at the creation, has helped to create them, has helped to market them, and has helped to make Apple what it is today. Like me, Phil married well above his station in life, and Kim is his partner in all things, a remarkable person as well. She and Phil have been dedicated to Bowdoin in their incredibly generous philanthropy here, as well as to a number of other educational institutions, and to work around the oceans and the environment, which is the thing that they hold dear. As many of you will remember, in the fall of 2017, we announced that Kim and Phil made a very generous gift to allow us to realize the potential in our land on Orr's Island, our 118 acres out on Orr's Island in Harpswell, and to build a companion dry lab for the wet lab that we have out there, as well as convening space, residential space, classroom space, and to create the environment where we'll be able to realize the full potential of teaching and scholarship around the oceans and the environment. This month we were expecting to dedicate, it's finished, and we were expecting to dedicate it. The pandemic has gotten in the way, so we will do that. Julianne and I were out there the other day walking around, and it's remarkable. It's beautiful, and it will be a remarkable space to just be in, but functionally as well. The goal of being able to realize the full potential of our ability to teach and do research in those areas is very real for us as well. So Phil and to Kim, thank you for making that possible for Bowdoin and for generations and generations of Bowdoin teachers and students to come. It's a great thing, and we are incredibly grateful. The last thing I would say, I guess, is before we get into some questions, is that Kim and Phil have two sons. Eric is a graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design. He's a furniture designer and a professional bicycle racer. And Mark is Bowdoin class of 17. He's currently in his third year, I think, Phil, in his doctoral program at Boston College in physics. And he is engaged to be married to Lucy Knott, also Bowdoin class of 17. So we love the polar bear couples, and that's great. I hope they're watching as well today. So Phil, thank you. Thanks and welcome. And as I said, I'll fire some questions. You can take them wherever you want. We'll have a bit of a discussion and then get on with questions from our audience. But take us a little bit through the journey of how you ended up at Apple and how you ended up at Apple twice, and what that process was around going there, for why you left in the first place, and why you returned, and then we'll explore that a little bit.
Sure. Well, first, hi everyone. Thanks for being online with us. You know, it's not a complex story. It's pretty simple. I love technology. I love gadgets. I love things like that. Getting to use them, understand them, hopefully be able to do incredible things with them. And so my career post college trended toward all those things. And along the way, starting around 1984 and 5, the Mac came out, and I was working in Massachusetts doing IT work on mainframes and telecommunication systems. And a friend at work got me really excited about it, kept saying, you really have to understand what this technology is going to do and how different it is. And we implemented a few systems using Macs, and I liked it so much that I had to find out more about this company, this Apple that I knew nothing about, sitting out on the East Coast. And I said, you know what, this is so exciting. I'll take any job you have, anything. I just want to be a part of this and experience it and learn and be close to this cool technology. And they said, well, we have this field marketing job thing. Nobody knows what it is, so you can try that. And so that's how I got into Apple. That's how I got into marketing, with no background in it whatsoever, was to do a new job they created in the field to help market the Mac in schools and businesses in the East Coast. And it was because I was in love with the technology, and I've tried to always keep that. I've always tried to keep my interest and passion for it just the same as every customer. That's what a lot of people feel about Apple, is getting to know us through the products, and I always try to retain that and appreciate that. And that's how it started. It began back in 1987 in Massachusetts. In 1988, we moved out here to California, and I got a job in the headquarters office. And I know that's before many of you online here were born, so it's hard to get my head around. I started working at Apple before many of you were born, but it's been a fun ride and a great place to be.
So tell us about why you left the first time, and then why you came back.
Yeah, in 1993, I'd been at Apple 7 years. I'd worked my way up, worked on a number of products and launched some great things. And a bunch of startups were happening all around us. It was really a wild, fun time for crazy new startups around new kinds of technology, new mobile ideas. And a few of my engineer friends that I worked with at Apple had gone to a startup that was top secret, and back then we used to have sabbatical, so I had taken a sabbatical after 7 years, and that just made me want to try something different. And there were a few things happening at Apple that I wasn't too happy about, and I tried to change and couldn't. And I thought, well, you know what? This is a great time to just hook up with my friends at one of these startups. And by coincidence, that startup was an offshoot of Steve Jobs' company Next. He spun out the hardware to a hardware company. And I went to run marketing for that hardware company as it was starting up and trying to create a new platform for computing. And that was what enticed me to leave Apple at the time.
So the decision to return?
Well, I was at that point, 3.5 years later, I got a call from Steve. Apple had just bought his company Next, and he wasn't at Apple, but he was trying to sort of help set it up for success, how to bring the next people into Apple and rearrange how it all fit together. And he called me and said, look, this place is going to be out of business in 6 months unless a few people don't come back and try to help. And I'd like you to come back on the product marketing side and help save Apple. And it was a not obvious choice, right? The whole world had written Apple off, said it was going to go out of business, had no reason to exist anymore, and things were dim. And so it was a leap of faith that things were going to change in a direction that I believed in. In fact, some of the things I believed in when I left that weren't happening were now going to happen. And Kim and I talked about it. We said, we have a choice to make. Do I want to go from what was now a good gig working well to something, again, risky? The big company was the risky thing. And literally what we said was, well, this will either fail, which it probably will, and no one really blamed you because it was already dying when you got there, or it'll be saved and it will be the greatest business success story that ever happened. And why wouldn't you want to be a part of that? And literally that was the thinking. And so I came back in spring of '97 and joined Apple. And then we all just worked hard to keep it alive.
So let's spend a couple minutes maybe on Steve Jobs, right? An iconic figure in the 20th and 21st century. You knew him well. So what was, couple questions. What was he like to work for?
Yeah, I love working for Steve. Probably the hardest working person I've ever met. Morning to night, weekends, holidays, he was always working and always in a creative way, always trying to think of the next thing, the next place to go. And, you know, I used to use the analogy that if any one of us can guess at 10 things that will happen one day, and we'll probably, if we're lucky, right 50% of the time. That would be a great hit rate. He was like 90% of the time. Steve would guess at 10 things, and 9 out of 10, he'd be so right. And you'd have to really listen and try to keep up with that pace of sort of envisioning a future and trying to make it real. So it was thrilling, exciting, hardworking, did not suffer fools gladly, as the saying goes, and that's certainly well known, but really respected all of us who had, knew what we were talking about, would speak up and challenge. We had many great arguments about things. And it was fun. Like, we had fun. People don't know that, or people don't understand that from movies and books that don't get it right. We used to joke around a lot and just enjoy what we did because we both shared a love of this technology and a love of the company. And also he cared a lot about his family, my family. That was very high on the list of things that were important. And so it's different than people portray it. Somebody that I care deeply about and taught me a lot.
What was his greatest gift? Was it that 9 out of 10, or was?
I don't know. People can all have their thing. I don't know. For me, just he so deep on so many things. You could talk about art, you could talk about music, you could talk about design, you could talk about how silicon's made with the latest fab techniques, talk about programming techniques that are now being deployed and how that influences how things get made, just anything. And it was just incredible how insightful and deep he was on so many things.
So he, as everyone knows, died way too young and in difficult circumstances. But you're a senior leader at the company. He's quite sick and then passes on. What was the impact at the company of his passing, and how did you? The founder is no longer there. All of what he brought, that what you've just described, is taken out of the equation, and yet, at least externally, Apple doesn't miss a beat. And we look at what's happened since then, and all of the amazing things. So how does that happen? So what was the impact of his passing at that time, and how did you push through that and keep going and do the things that you've been doing since then?
A number of things. One, when Steve came back, he really reshaped Apple again with all that incredible experience he had had previously in his other companies. And that touched everything from how we're organized, very functional driven organization like a startup, to how we design and create products and the integration of our design team with our engineering teams in new processes. And he really rebuilt us into a new Apple based on all his best thinking. So that, for one, became a part of what allowed us to continue. And still today, a lot of that is how we work and how we're organized. So that was one thing. The second, he just invested in building a team, a great team, not myself, but so many other incredible people from Tim Cook, our CEO, on through people all through the organization. He wanted talent at every level and to empower that talent to do great work. He gave us a value system of what we make and why we make it, and how we judge what is the kind of things we want to make. He even built an internal education program where we try to educate the future leaders of Apple on how we take on challenges, how we go through our decision-making process, the paths we've chosen and why, and what worked and what didn't. And so a lot of things from the teams and the people and the organization structure and the values were set up so that it could survive and continue and thrive. And I think, again, that's part of that forethought that most people I've met don't have to that degree. And I think that a lot of what he set up and a lot of the great people who are here and are why it's continued.
Yeah, it's quite a remarkable legacy, actually, when you think about it, right? That not what most he's not an entrepreneur. He's unique, right? So that's yeah. So we're going to go to some of the questions from the audience now, and if you've got questions, just put them into the Q&A function, and we'll tee them up. So Phil, you've been a strong defender of privacy and technology. But are we really able to safeguard privacy given our technological advances, which seemingly have outstripped legislation and regulation?
Yeah, I do care a lot about this topic. I have for many, many, many years. So have many others. As we've moved online, we've moved to digital lives, more and more of our information can be tracked and compiled and used in ways that are surprising to many of us. And so I think it's important that we set up a belief system that as users, individuals, we deserve the right to understand, have transparency about what's being collected about us, and deserve the right to control our personal information, how it's used, where it's used. Simple words, big task. And I think there's a lot to be done to help protect that, especially with children who can't understand all of that as they use technology. And so I think that's on all of us. It's no one person's. It's on parents and how they let their children use technology. It's on those of us who make technology and services. It's on governments who create laws and regulations. I think Europe's been a step ahead with their regulation called GDPR, and that's had some really good, good results. It's not the end; it's the beginning of a process. But I think it's important. I think it's easy for some to throw up their hands and say, "Well, it's just the way it is." I don't. I think it's the more we can help people understand and see and make smart choices. Not saying you don't share information, not saying there isn't good uses of it, there are, but we all should be a part of that process to understand it and make choices about it.
What do you worry most about with respect to privacy? And throw in one other piece, which is that Apple has staked out a very specific position in the world, which and you've articulated some of that. But much of Silicon Valley and the bigger players have a very different view about the notion of privacy. In some ways, it's well articulated, and in other ways, it feels like they're flailing to try to figure out where they should end up. But what do you worry the most about, and how is it to operate in that kind of environment and be part of that ecosystem when the view that you have is quite unique relative to others there?
Well, to start with, for me anyway, I always like to start with what can I affect? Where can I have an impact? Where can I set an example? And where can we help people understand? And ripples will come from that. It's perhaps others' job to worry about across whole industries, and that's at least for me, not where I spend my time. So what can I do? What can we do in our products? What can we do in our education and communication to users? What can we do on the App Store? You know, where are all these places where we can make a difference, and that difference itself will be educational and help. So I'll give you a few examples. One of the most important areas of privacy, I think, is your location. And the technology around location today is incredible. GPS satellites are helping us find where we are. Maps are helping us to get to places safer, easier than ever before. We can see where our friends are and we can meet up. There are just so many good uses of mapping technology. But with that, your data is going to people and they're seeing where you are, and perhaps there's things you don't want them to see and know, and you don't want them to know when you're at the doctor's office, and maybe you don't want them to know, you know, whatever. And so you should have an understanding of that data, and it shouldn't restrict your use. You should be able to get these great benefits, and you should decide who has access to that, and that the benefits or trade-offs are what you want. And so we've built that, a lot of that in technology into our maps itself, into the technologies, the APIs we make available to developers, so that it automatically asks your permission when you want to enable location. You can see on your phone when an app has used your location, so you're aware of it, and you can connect the dots. And you can change it and say, no, I don't really want that camera app to know my location just because I took a picture. And okay, you can make that choice. I think we all want that. Another example is something we've announced that we're working on rolling out, is what we call a nutrition label on the App Store. Right? When you go to buy food in the supermarket, it tells you different ingredients and elements that you can make personal choices of what's right for you. Well, wouldn't it be great to have a nutrition label on apps that told you what data an app will collect when you download it and want to use it before you decide to use it, so that you have some, again, transparency and control. And you may be fine with all the things that these apps do, but at least you're in a little bit better position to make those choices. And through that, all of our knowledge will grow. So it's things like that.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So we'll move to the next question here. How is Apple adjusting its digital commerce strategies due to the rise of Amazon and other competitors?
Well, first of all, it's multi-layered. You know, we have many channels that we provide our products through. So we sell through our stores, online, other online retailers, other physical stores. Amazon is a channel that our products are offered through. And part of it is that certainly the market competes, and that's a good thing, right? Competition is always a great thing to have. for all of us. And so I think having our products available in many different channels and allowing those channels all to present to the user a set of value and pricing, and users can decide where they want to get their products, helps to drive a lot of that macroeconomic dynamic. I think the best thing we can do is provide our product through as many of those places as we can and let customers decide where they want to purchase them. I think that system's worked really well and grown around the world.
Was it a hard decision to go physical and to open an Apple, to have an Apple store?
It was a remarkable thing. You have to put yourself over a decade back in mind of where retail was and what was going on. And it wasn't my decision. So a project Steve drove with some other great people. And at the time, our largest physical store chain in the US was CompUSA, I think. And that went through some, was purchased by another company and things are changing. And here we were about to bring a whole bunch of new technology into the world. And we looked at what it was like to go to these stores, and the sales process there just didn't help them to have the knowledge base to explain to people what you could do with photography and video, and as things were moving digital. And we realized, well, we have a problem. This channel isn't doing really well, and they don't have the consistent sales skills to really help explain innovation. And so, in fact, you'd go to a store and maybe the Mac would be in the back corner somewhere in some of these stores, and there's not much we could do about it. So we decided, for the health of our company, we needed to define and create a new channel, our new stores, and while also being in all those other channels, because we wouldn't be the biggest channel for our products. And it was a scary thought, because everyone in the industry said, no, that's a bad idea. In fact, at the time, there was a personal computer company, Gateway, that had opened their stores and they were already failing. And people said, yeah, that proves that model isn't the right model. But Steve and Ron Johnson, who was the first leader of Apple Retail, and others who worked on it, all had a different vision. And I remember I actually had a conversation with Steve where I said, I don't understand. We make these products our customers love. They don't love the buying experience. Why do we want to go into that? And maybe they won't love us as much anymore. And he said, no, trust me, we're going to create something that will not lower the value of Apple. It'll increase it, because it will be such a great experience. And it seemed impossible to believe at the time. And yet that's what was created, an amazing buying experience. And now it's grown to this incredible global footprint for people to directly connect with Apple, with amazing store employees that bring so much value to the experience you have with Apple. It's been one of the greatest things we've done.
Yeah. I mean, it's the singular success almost in retail right now, and you anchor wherever you are. You're the anchor for. Yeah, it's really quite a thing. Okay. Has Apple shifted its product roadmap due to COVID?
Well, product roadmaps are things that evolve over a decade. So you don't just quickly adjust over things even like this. And I can't talk about the future of the roadmap, so we're not going to go there. But I will say one of the things that worked really well this year for us is we brought out a lower priced iPhone in the spring, iPhone SE, and it just did really well, because it's a time where people are worried about the economy, and lower priced, high quality products can do really well. And I think that just the combination of the timing and what was going on was really wonderful for customers and for us. The use of technologies at home like iPad, which again, we've been at a long time and is a category and a product that we love deeply, has taken on new meaning, where people are learning from home, working from home, and iPad has done incredibly well. And so I do think our products the general things we make are what we're doing, but the situations around them have changed a bit. And there's ways you can lean into that and help even more. Like we have teams that are working with school districts, helping to get more iPads to help children at home. And there are things around that shift and change, but based on the things we were already working on and doing.
Maybe you can take just a minute and describe the public health initiative that Apple and Google partnered on here, and what drove that and where that is now.
Sure. Throughout this whole time of the pandemic, like everybody, we're all looking for whatever we can do to help. And at Apple, there's a lot of things we can do, not only making sure people can get access to our stores and our Apple Care services because you rely on your products, you need to get them fixed, and they're so important to you. So got to worry about that. We made masks for many people and PPEs. We've helped in a number of ways. But one way we found we could be of service to everyone is with this idea of exposure notification. So part of what contact tracing is there a way to have technology help the population understand better who's been exposed to the virus? How can technology do that and do it in a privacy protecting way? Right? That was the most important thing. And in our engineering team, really working together we have a health team at Apple, together came up with a way of doing that, and in concert together with Google decided this really needs to work across both iOS, iPhone, and Android phones, so that as you are near people with either kinds of devices, the exposure notification can work appropriately. But in the end, this is technology we're making for public health officials, not for Apple or Google to make, but for governments, for public agencies whose job it is to decide within their country, within their population, how they want to roll out and support contact tracing and exposure notification. So we've created that technology and been advancing it very quickly over just a few months to make sure it works for more and more agencies around the world, and they can roll it out. And there are countries around the world that have been rolling out and doing this, from UK, Singapore, and so many great countries. And in the US, of course, where we're doing it in the US as a country is state by state. We're starting to see states bring it on. New York has just launched a program with it, and bit by bit we'll see it around the US as well.
Yeah, we'd like to see it in Maine. It would be helpful here. I just want to stick with COVID for another couple of minutes here, Phil, and if you could just offer your thoughts on how you and the company adjusted to COVID. You have employees who are in stores, and you've got and customers and supply chain and so forth. And in particular, you're very heavily involved in China, in all those employees, customers, supply chain. China was at the beginning of the virus, and they were dealing with it first. Can you just talk a little bit about how you responded and dealt with that, and bring China into play a little bit?
Yeah, I'll share some observations. Again, not my area that I run, so I take no credit for it. There's just a lot of great work that's been happening here with our own employee base, really starting directly with our CEO, Tim Cook, but also with our head of people in retail, Deirdre O'Brien, and we have our COO also runs our health and watch products, Jeff Williams, and they've been on it from the very first day, really with brilliant leadership. One of the things what's interesting about our position at Apple is that being a global company, we tend to see some things at different times than others do. And we do have a lot of employees and partnerships in China, make products in China. And so as COVID began there, as you know, that things shut down there, businesses had to close, schools closed, until the point where they start opening them up again. And that whole cycle was happening well before that cycle came to us here in the US. And so when, February, March comes around and we're all talking about what's going to happen in the US. Are we going to close down? Should we? How will we do it? Well, one of the first things we could turn to is look to China and say, hey, how the Apple teams, how we've been managing it there, what's worked, what's the experience, and that just helped, I think, us to move so quickly in the US and around the world to establish policies and procedures and quickly close things down, set parameters for how you help employees, help customers, how you start to open things up again. And I think we just had a nice early start on it and a lot of experience and awareness. And I'll tell you, the teams here have met every day since it started and looking at global data and trying to make sure the right decisions are made at every place around the world, depending on the individual. That's one of the things we learned early on, is it is going to be a different situation in every location. You just can't have a blanket policy.
All right, we'll move on to a separate question here. Harkens back a little bit to what we talked about earlier. What's the difference between working with Steve Jobs and Tim Cook? Are their visions different? What would Steve Jobs say about today's Apple?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. It's great in all cases. Steve really is, I mean, he founded this company along with Steve Wozniak, and it's his company, and he set the vision and direction and our values and pushed for great products and changing the world, right? So it was just an incredible, inspiring, exciting time. And then I think everyone wondered, can anyone follow in his footsteps? Can anyone continue to lead Apple after that? I mean, that's quite a tall order. And Tim has been wonderful. He's an incredibly great leader, cares deeply about this company, is passionate about our products and our users. And I think that's the number one value that helps people succeed at Apple is passion for what we do and the customers who use our products. And so I think a lot of things have just continued on and continue great, and same values for what we do and why we do it. And but one of the things that has changed, and I think Tim has been so great for us, is that a decade ago, 2 decades ago, we could really put our head down and say, look, let's just focus on the product and everything else will come from that. Let's reinvent the computer again, get back to making a great Mac, invent the iPhone, invent the iPod, and that was, we could be so singularly focused to make that happen. But as the world has evolved and things have gotten bigger and we're in more places and we're a larger company, you can't just be that. Apple needs to actually be a light for how do you have diversity in your company? What do you do about the environment, which has been one of the greatest issues facing the world? And Tim brought on Lisa Jackson, our head of environment, and she's done an incredible job working with the teams and rallying all of that to an even higher level than we ever did before. And so Tim has brought a whole nother level of engagement on values and issues that are important where Apple has a role to play. And that's been a great continuation of growing Apple. And so it's been great for different reasons in both of these times.
All right. Following up on your comments, Phil, about the next things, the 10 next things, what areas or industries do you think are of particular interest and would offer new graduates of Bowdoin College growth opportunities?
Well, I always, you got to start with, don't go into something just because someone tells you it'll be hot. Hey, this will be great, so you should go there. I really think people succeed when they love what they do, when they're passionate about it, they're driven, they're willing to work day and night because it's not work, it's what they love. And whatever you love, whether it's technology or politics or sports, or find your path in that, and you'll just succeed because people will feed off your enthusiasm and your excitement, and you'll be so knowledgeable about it because you want to consume and understand all about it. So I think that's core to whatever you're interested in and where you want to go. Find your thing. Within for what I am passionate about and know about with technology, it is just still becoming even more pervasive in our lives, right? Everything in a sense becomes a computer. Your phone becomes a computer, your refrigerator becomes a computer, your watch becomes a computer. So over time, your car is becoming a computer. Everything's becoming intelligent, computerized. And so that the field is just expanding in many areas. And as it expands, it's all also going to have to connect as an ecosystem for us. 10, 20 years ago, you could have a point product. You could have an iPod that just played music, and we loved that singularity of it. Now, our music player needs to play music. It needs to work with our wireless earbuds. It needs to connect when we get in the car. It needs to play on our speaker when we get home. We need to share with our friends the music we're listening to. Everything needs to start to connect. So you have these amazing expansion of products, and you have the connection of them in an ecosystem. So just the opportunities in all of that are remarkable. One of the techniques on creating these intelligent connected systems is, of course, machine learning and in AI. And so those techniques of software development, both knowing how to do it, as well as the people who manage it and can understand what products are made from that technology, will continue to be incredibly important. We're big believers in the category of health and technology. Again, as more and more of our health devices become intelligent, more information from them become important in our lives. And again, selfishly speak about Apple Watch, the idea that you can check your heart rate when something doesn't feel right anytime, anywhere, and share that with your health caregivers to help them be more informed rather than just running into the hospital to get checked and it's nothing. I mean, that's an incredible thing to start to have happen in the world. There'll be many more things like that as we move forward. And so I just think health is a big area. Augmented reality is another area we're all so excited about. The idea that we've got this rich data set of things that help us, health data, navigation data, entertainment, and now around the world, are there places where it overlays and is an experience that could be better? Imagine you're a history student, you could walk through a city and you could hold up your phone and look, and there you saw the way the streets looked 100 years ago and what businesses were there, and you could experience that in the real world around you through that augmented technology. I just think there's so much to come there. It's really exciting. So I could go on and on. There's no end to the opportunities and the things that are inspiring and exciting about it.
So the next question was on that same point. So we'll having answered that, we'll skip on to the next one. What is the most important lesson that you've learned about building a brand?
Well, the first one was Steve taught us to not use the word brand, and no, everyone else does. So there's nothing wrong with that, but we don't. And because he said, just substitute Apple for brand. What does it take to build Apple? How do you market and talk about Apple? And for us, maybe different from many others, we exist through our products, right? People understand us, experience us through the products we make. We're a technology company. And so if you want to make and grow what Apple is, then grow what the products are. Make them more amazing, make them more innovative, make them more creative. And then Apple will be those things because it is through our products. And I do think that for us, the experience I learned was to grow who we are. It comes back to the core thing we do, and that is how we're judged, and we should be judged on those things.
What's been the most difficult thing about growing the notion of Apple? I'm just trying to substitute now and think about what the challenge is there. What's the thing you worry the most about with respect to that idea?
Well, it's a good challenge. This is not bad. It's a good challenge. The good challenge is as the world grows and we have more and more customers around the world in more places, there are more people who have diverse thoughts about what they need and want from us, and it becomes a larger and larger expectation that gets set. And I think our customers have very high expectations about, well, Apple, you say you want to make everything work super easy to use, and you want these things to work seamlessly together, and you want the designs to be beautiful, and you want all, so do that. Like, I'm measuring you on all of that, and maybe not anyone else at the same level. You're getting measured different, and that's not about fair or unfair. It's just a good thing. You've set a high expectation, and people want you to live up to that. It's one of the things that gets me up in the morning and coming to work every day is the expectations our customers have on us are so high, and you want to live up to those. You want to deliver on that. And so I think that's a good problem to have, a lot of customers with high expectations and more diverse. I mean, think about when we put out a new update to iOS for iPhone users, over 1 billion people will load that up and experience it. And if 99% are happy and 1% are unhappy, that's a lot of unhappy people, right? And so, you know, it's the law of large numbers, right? And so, but that's a good problem, and it's one everyone embraces here and takes on.
All right, with the white collar office environment possibly going into under the endangered list due to COVID, how is Apple encouraging and helping its own employees to continue to work collaboratively, build on a fantastic track record of innovation?
Well, if there are any silver linings on all this happening in the world, and I don't want to put down how tough it is for people, one of them is that we've all had to learn some new things and new ways to work that we never really had to fully embrace before, and probably didn't think we knew if we could when this all started. The idea that we can all work from home and we can, in our case, launch products, support customers, you know, do all the things we do from home seemed pretty crazy, honestly. And we have all these tools, video conferencing and on, and web-based systems to manage things, but still never really had to completely rely on them. And then here we are, very quickly having to pivot and rely on them. We have a lot of people inside the company whose job it is to build and support those systems and get us ready for moments like this. And they did. They really helped us have the support we needed to do it. And it's been illuminating. We have been able to do things that I would not have thought we could do, to work remotely and connect and be on calls all day and still keep everything moving forward, keep launching new products and having events online instead of in person. And so it's been an amazing educational experience for what's possible. With all of that, though, most everyone I work with can't wait to get back together again in some new semblance of a normal afterwards, where we can, because we get a lot of creative juices from being together and talking to each other face to face and what have you, and a lot more, you know, a lot of what happens often is in a hallway conversation, not in the scheduled meeting, but the time you just bump into someone and say, hey, I had an idea, what do you think about this or that? And those creative environments, we can create them digitally, but they're not quite the same. So I think there's things that'll last on with this, things we now know we can do that we didn't know we could do before and will work, but there's also desire to find those moments to be together.
All right, here are a couple slightly different focus here. Phil, I work in healthcare. So far, it seems that Apple is dabbling. The watch is interesting as a sensory device, but problematic for reliable readings, too much variation. The ear canal is far more reliable location. How does Apple see itself making a meaningful impact in healthcare, or does it?
So again, not my world. There's others at Apple who work on this. So I won't take credit for it or presume to have all the vision of it. But it's really great. We're not dabbling. This is incredibly important to us. We have teams of doctors and nurses and research scientists that are working really hard on what are the best technologies for Apple, because others will bring whatever they bring. What can Apple bring and where can we add value? And you know, yes, you can go to a hospital and you can put on a piece of equipment and get a perfect reading of something. But the thought that in between those times that there's the opportunity to help people learn a little bit more about their health data, to get access to it at other times, has brought real benefits. And you can watch, we put them on our events because we're so moved by them. Right? We get letters and emails from customers daily. I mean, daily. And an incredibly large number of those start with, I would have died had I not had this device. And it, whatever happened, helped me in a fall, helped me when I couldn't, reach someone, and it dialed SOS for me and with 911, or it gave me a reading of my heart where I didn't feel anything unusual or whatever. And so I don't really, it's not my job I don't focus on what the percent degree of accuracy is or isn't. I just know there are people walking around today that might not have been had not the technology become available to them from us or from someone else. And that is incredibly important. And we believe we have a role to play in this, and it may be one of the most important roles Apple plays in the long term about this company. And if so, that's a pretty exciting place to be. But as Apple does everything, we don't run in and try 1,000 features and just see what sticks and works. We try to take the time to study it, understand it, deliver it when we think it works well and helps people. And we don't do things just to rush stuff out there. That's not what we're about.
Right, on the environment, another important issue for you and for, I think for Apple, but you'll comment on that. Microsoft has made impactful climate pledges, carbon negative, zero waste and water positive by 2030, removal of their historic carbon emission by 2050. Apple is committed to being carbon neutral by 2030. How do you think about sustainability? How is Apple going to continuing to improve their sustainability goals? And I'll just tag on to that. What do you think the role of business is in the issue of the environment here? What responsibilities do business organizations have with respect to the environment?
Well, this is definitely an area that many people at Apple are incredibly passionate about and work really hard at. And our goal is to be a leader at this. And I think in many ways the teams already are, and they know it's a journey. There's no end to it. There's always more to do. But our teams work at everything from the supply of materials and where do they come from and how are they sourced and how sustainable that is, all the way up to how things are packaged, how things are shipped, what's the cost of that shipping, what's the fossil fuels used in that shipping and what impact they have on the environment, to how long products last in the real world and how they're recycled. And we've done everything from investing in forestry to building dams in places that can bring electricity to to whole communities. We've built solar farms, some of the largest solar farms in the world. On and on and on. There's you can just go to apple.com/environment and see the list of things is tremendous. And it's not stopping. We're doing everything from new methods of making products with recycled aluminum to, we have robots that now disassemble iPhones to maximize recycling every single component we can, on and on. And it's incredibly important, and it's something we work hard at. Data centers, all our data centers are now run on renewable energy. There's no end to it.
How do you think about, as a more general matter, Phil, the responsibility that businesses have here, and maybe in the context of how you observe, are you observing businesses leaning into this, and or do you see the Microsofts and the Apples as being outliers in the world?
I'm not the expert on all what all businesses do. I think one of the things we believe is that it isn't a trade-off, succeeding in business or being aggressive in protecting the environment. it's the goal of leading companies to show that these things are both synergistic goals. And that's certainly been what our team has tried to communicate and show and prove through our own actions, is that you can do both at the same time. And I think that's the ultimate goal of business, is to lead the way, right? Leaders educate, that's what they do. And we need to educate other businesses, show competitors, whatever, to, as we do, make this a priority and at the same time succeed as a business.
So I'm mindful that we're getting to the top of the hour here, and I've just flipped through. I want to, there's a lot of, all these questions are great, so we're not going to get to all of them, and I'm sorry about that part, but there's one here which is a little different and kind of interesting, and you and I've touched a bit on this in the past, but what is your preparation like to keynotes that you do? You get nervous for your presentations. Are pregame, what are any pregame rituals that you, Tim, and others do to get pumped up ahead of time? And the last two pre-recorded launches, keynotes, were so well done. What was the pivot like from live and in-person sessions? And did the new format inspire innovation with the keynotes, perhaps even after the future of social distancing? So you can take that question, but yeah, I mean, so anyway.
Well, this is an area I love. Right? You know, I've worked on events for so long at Apple, and there's, again, like work, having people together in a place and feeling a shared energy and excitement about something will always be a great thing. So the pivot to online brings other opportunities, but nothing replaces that. I still love that. But in terms of first preparation, these events, the things we do, we start thinking about a year in advance in many cases, and then the work just builds up as you get closer and closer. For me, when I'm in them, I certainly think a lot about what we're saying, and try to really find the right words and ideas, and put the way we talk about something, I think is really important in how we show things, and is a value to the process. In terms of sort of preparation, personal, I don't have a lot that I do. I just try not to eat the morning of a keynote because I just don't want anything to happen. But I wouldn't say I get nervous, but I certainly get adrenaline rush and build up of excitement and anticipation, and I am always on the edge of my seat. During a keynote, I'll just pace back and forth backstage the whole time. I can't sit down. I'm just too full of energy, and also watching every detail for any mistake. I just want to be a perfectionist at it, and every little detail matters to me, and so I get like that. Others do. Some others get like listen to pump up music, that they have songs that they're used to listening to beforehand, certain foods they eat or things they have to drink before their keynote, and so others, everyone's different. Me, there's not much other than a lot of excitement. Yes, as I said, we start planning far in advance, but once March happened, we're all working from home. The realization hit, oh my goodness, the regulations are starting to come in county by county. Not going to have people together. So anything we were planning on launching and doing an event, forget about it. It's not happening that way. So I think everyone in our industry had to regroup and think, what are you going to do? Some companies just canceled events entirely and said, not going to do them. I'll leave them unnamed. Some companies said, well, we'll do it, but it'll be a little bit more, low key. We'll have cameras at home, and you record yourself. We'll just splice it together, and they did that. Some tried to put on some events with a little bit of stage, green screening, and they came out, just okay. I was really excited to work with the whole team and say, now we're going to take advantage of this time to do something different, something new, but no less ambitious, in fact, more ambitious, and figure a way during this time to produce something and learn some new skills along the way, how to shoot some things, deliver some content, and you know, most up till now, a majority of our keynotes, we really like deliver to the audience in the room and then try to have the online audience watch it and feel as if they were in the room, right? That's kind of a lot of how they felt. This time, there is nobody in the room, so you're now delivering for somebody at home. And that slight difference in who you're presenting to and how you're designing it really matters through the execution of it all. And the time length shortened by about 50%, because frankly, just sitting on this is a little more taxing and tiring for people. And so you have to be a little bit more aware of the length of it and trim it. But you could then take advantage of things. You can move between presenters quicker. You can move between spaces that you couldn't when you're stuck on a stage, right? You can't move far across the campus and around the world. Now we can. And so we can definitely make it more seamless and trying some new things. And that's what we've done. And it's worked out really great. The last thing I'll say on that is the first one we did this way was our developer conference in June. And it had the added challenge that not only was it one of our biggest keynotes we do in a year, and we did all these things, but then it had a week of content for our developers, on average over 100 sessions. And we said, all right, we're not going to, everyone else cut their stuff back. We're not going to cut back. We're going to deliver over 100 sessions. So, and then we said, well, since they're not fitting into a calendar of time, because you're not in a conference hall, we can actually break them up by whatever their natural lengths are and not group things together. So we ended up shooting over 200 sessions, over 70 hours of video of engineers talking to developers about how to make software for Apple. So we produced 70 hours of high quality film work that we had to shoot. And I think about a blockbuster movie, you know, 2.5 hours long, the production time to shoot and do all that in a couple of years. This had to be done between when we went at home in March and we delivered it in June. You had to dream that up, figure out the process to do it, shoot it all, edit it all, and bring it online. So it was probably the most intense project I've ever seen from a marketing side at Apple. And the team was unbelievable, what they pulled off.
All right, Phil, we've hit the magic hour here. Thank you. Thanks for your thoughtfulness, your candor, for letting us get inside your head and some of the experiences you've had at Apple as you've taken it from, you know, a startup and a company that needed to go through a very radical change to the amazing company that it is today. And thank you for being a part of Bowdoin, to you and Kim both, for everything that you do. We're so grateful for that, and it's personally great fun for me. So I look forward to doing this again on the stage at Pickard Theater when we can all be back together again. So
yes,
so thank you.
Can't wait to
Thank
be
you
out
all.
there again. So thank you all. Thank you, Clayton, for all that you do for the school and how you all keep working through this. It's also an incredible effort. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the homecoming festivities that we've got planned online. And I'll see you all soon. Be well, be safe.
Bye-bye.